All right. Okay. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
We are back. Continuing with our look at the triennial Torah portion. We are, of course, continuing in the book of Bereshit, Genesis. We are going to be looking at today Genesis chapter 6, starting with the 9th verse. And we're going to go through and finish out the 6th chapter and also look at the 7th chapter, 6 and 7, and deal with, within these chapters, the generations of Noah. The generations of Noah. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to jump right into this. So we'll go ahead, let me pull up Genesis chapter 6, verse 9. So we'll go ahead and start reading at verse 9 there. Let me just put it up here on the screen real quick here. Okay, go ahead.
And it says, this is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with Elohim, and Noah brought forth 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth was corrupt before Elohim, and the earth was filled with violence. And Elohim looked upon the earth and saw that it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And Elohim said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. For the earth is filled with violence through them, and see, I am going to destroy them from the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and outside with a covering. And this is how you are to make it. The length of the ark is 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make a window for the ark, and complete it to a cubit from above. And set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. And see, I myself am bringing flood waters on the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under the heavens. All that is on the earth is to die. And I shall establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you and your sons, and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And all the living of all flesh, 2 of each, you are to bring into the ark to keep them alive with you, a male and a female, of the birds after their kind, and of the cattle after their kind, and of all creeping creatures of the ground after their kind. 2 of each are to come to you to keep them alive. As for you, take of all food that is eaten, and gather it to yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them. And Noah did according to all that Elohim commanded him, so he did.
Okay, very good. Very good. Hold on one second. Let me just notes here. All right. All right. Let's go back up here to the beginning and look at a few things here, starting with the 9th verse. It begins, this is the generation of Noah, of Noach. Okay, we've seen this a few times at this point. We talked about the generations of the heavens and the earth. We talked about the generations of Seth and Noah and So generations of Adam, it was just all kinds of generations, right? And we're able to see very quickly this little pattern that we see in the biblical text in terms of the way that this word here, toldot, is used in regards to how it's put here in these various chapters, where we see we know who came before Noah. Can't remember if we've seen his children or not, but again, when we look at this this kind of a literary tool that's used in these various chapters to say, basically, here's a story about Noah. Basically, once upon a time, there was somebody called Noah, right? Elah toldot Noach, right? So when we look at this, we're getting ready to learn about this man called Noah. So when we look at this Noah person here, it says that Noah was a righteous man. He was perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with Elohim. Interestingly enough, if we look up if we look up walked with Elohim in the scriptures, I believe you only find that phrase 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Like that, walked with Elohim. 2 of them are one person, Enoch and Noah, right? And so one of these 2 persons, we talked about Enoch last week in terms of the fact that, his walking with Elohim had less to do with him, picking up one foot and placing it in front of the other, walking, but it had more to do with his character, with his conduct, and his connection with the Most High. And so when we look over here at Noah, we see that he had a similar connection with the Most High. I'm not sure how much similar it was. I assume, I can only assume that his walk wasn't, I don't know if it was exactly like Enoch's. Maybe he wouldn't die either. But I don't know if they're to be compared with one another or whatever, but when we look at this, the scripture inspiration wants for us to understand that Noah had a relationship with the Most High. Okay? And it says that he was perfect. It says that he was righteous. I want to look at righteousness, even though it comes first here. I want to look at perfect. First. Let's go over here. Let me pull up the lexicons here in a moment. All right, so Genesis 6:9, he was perfect in his generation. Well, before we look at the word, just the context of this, it's interesting that, again, we talked about last week some of how the Most High uses words to convey a particular message. He doesn't have idle words given. The words that he uses, he wants them to be used for a specific purpose. And so we look over here at Genesis 6 and 9, where it says that he was perfect in his generations. I wonder why it has that kind of caveat.
In his generation.
Like, why is that caveat there in his generations? Perfect in his generations. Perfect in his times.
I need to get mine. I don't know why I don't have my Tanakh out. I need to get my Tanakh out.
Hey, you want the other one? Which one is that?
This is the Stone edition. Hey, Hesky, give me the other.
No, it isn't.
What verse is that?
9. It's 9, and that is Dur, which is a revelation of time, a revolution of time, excuse me, or an age, generation, dwelling age, evermore generations, so on and so forth. No, that's not it.
Oh no, that's not it. That's in the
And so the idea here is in his time, in his, in the time in which he lived, he was perfect.
Oh, I'm in.
Okay? And so that always kind of caused me to think about, are we speaking about like a relative perfection? Right? It was perfect in his generations, but his generations were wicked. So, what does that say about his perfection? If you go to the penitentiary and you talk about the most righteous person who, dwells among the thieves, how right.
It's on the radio.
Okay, so we potentially could look at this and have the idea of, because inspiration has given us this caveat in his generations, why is it saying this? Why is it giving this to us like this? Is it some type of comparison thing that he's making when it says in his generations? All right, so that's something that someone might think. And again, as I said, I've thought about that over the years. I'm not sure that we're able to kind of put that on Noah like that and say that, he wasn't that perfect because look at who he was being compared to. I think that a better way to think about it, is the fact, which is a thing I would say that probably elevates it, the perfection as opposed to diminishing the perfection. When you think about the, how he was surrounded by nothing but wickedness, right? He was surrounded with these wicked, awful people. The whole world. No one in the world was worth saving except for Noah and the ones that came from him. And so literally everyone around him was evil and wicked, and yet and still he was still perfect. When we think about the idea of sin, we talked about this many times. When you think about the idea of sin, it deals with our carnal appetites. And being sinful, being wicked, there's a total lack of restraint. You think about children. The children are so sinful. Why? Because they don't understand restraint. They do everything to the fullest. They don't understand having parameters, and they don't understand things like discretion and things. They just do whatever they feel, and they do it, right? And so it's easy to live a life of sin, right? Because there's no discipline involved. There's no discipline involved in a sinful life. You do whatever you feel, regardless of the consequences. There's nothing stopping you. You just do as thou wilt. And so when you live in a place where there's nothing but that, and yet you remain perfect, that says a lot about you. Right? So again, we look at perfect in his generations. This isn't something that diminishes his perfection. It's something that magnifies his perfection. It's something that causes it to be greater. But let's look at the word anyway. We don't even know. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that can be compared to sending your kid to college to live in a dorm, and all the kids are going out to parties and doing craziness, and the child or the young person is able to withstand in his holiness.
Well, first of all, there's no reason for you to correct yourself. You can say the child.
Yes, the child maintains his holiness in the midst of everyone doing as they wilt.
Yeah.
Because they finally are free, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So Noah was perfect in his time. He was perfect in his era, which was, by the way, an era of debauchery. Okay, but let's look at this word here, perfect. If I can find my cursor. Oh, here it is. Perfect. Tamim. Entire integrity, truth, without blemish, complete, full, perfect, sincerity, sound, without spot, undefiled, upright, whole. So Noah was able to maintain his wholeness in spite of his age that he dwelled in. Right? He was able to remain without blemish in spite of his generations. Right? The fact that there was more of an negative influence that could potentially be on him, and he was able to go in the complete opposite direction as everyone else, right? It just can. This is something that just elevates the perfection, the integrity, the completeness, the fullness of who Noah was, right? And so, there's much for us to learn about Noah in this, in these words here. It's one third of this verse over here, right? We find out, we're about to learn about his generations. He was righteous and perfect, and he walked with Elohim, right? Two-thirds of this verse over here, speak magnificently about the man called Noah, right? But again, as I was saying, the caveat that is put there in his generations, I think that it's impossible, I would say, to kind of think that that is like a relative perfectness, because of, the things that we see surrounded here. Could we say that, this is a relative perfection and that he walked with Elohim? Meanwhile, no one in the scripture, they don't talk about no one else besides him and Enoch that walked with Elohim, and Elohim never even died. I mean, not Elohim, Enoch never dies, right? Potentially the most righteous and the most perfect, just regular individuals. That's my caveat. The most regular individuals in the Bible. How could we say that this is like a relative perfectness, right? Those two things really don't coincide with one another. Right?
At that point, if it was just relative, he could have just started all over again. Except forget these people.
Right. Right.
If it was all wicked.
Right. Or if he was just a little bit perfect. Right, he was just a little bit whole. Right, a little bit whole is not even that's not even a word, is it? It's not even a thing. If it's a little bit whole, that's like a part, isn't it? It's like if something's a little bit whole, like you wouldn't describe a thing like that. Either it's whole or it isn't. Right?
Yeah.
7/8 ain't an inch. 7/8 ain't an inch.
It's a little bit of an inch. Well, it's almost an inch.
It's almost an inch, but it's not.
Oh my goodness. It's short.
Yeah, it's a little shy. Let me get some more. It's a little shy. Okay, so let's look at this other thing that is calling Noah. It calls him perfect. By the way, we think about Yeshua. Right? Because we always want to remember Yeshua, and Noah, of course, points us towards Yeshua. We'll talk about that as we continue. But when we think about the fact that Yeshua says to his disciples, he said, "Be you therefore perfect." He said, "Be you therefore perfect." Right? So he calls for it because your Father who is in heaven is perfect. Right? And so when we look and think about the idea of perfection, we think about the idea of wholeness and completeness, right? Integrity. Right? These aren't things that first of all, these aren't things that are relative to our surroundings. Right? When Yeshua is calling for our perfection, for our maturity, for our completeness and wholeness, it's not relative to what's around you in terms of the world. Right? Because a thing that we also see in the Bible is for us to be in the world, but not of the world. Right? And so the things that go on in the world around us aren't the things that our lives are dictated by. Right? We live in this world, in this wicked world, and we maintain our rightness and our uprightness, our righteousness, our perfection in spite of those things, right? And so when we think about the wholeness of Scripture isn't calling for us to be better than the wicked. The wicked isn't our measuring place, right? Because anybody really can be better than the wicked, right? And so the way that we determine, our wholeness, the way that we determine our completeness doesn't have anything to do with the wicked, right? That's not our standard. Our standard isn't let's be better than the worst person that we can think of. Right?
Oh my goodness.
Exactly. The world doesn't set the standard for us. Yahweh does. Right? That's not our standard. Right? And so when we think about the perfection that Yeshua is speaking about, along with this perfection that inspiration is speaking about in Genesis chapter 6 and 9, we can't think about that in regards of this relative perfection, right? The perfection that Yeshua is calling for is a perfection that we understand when we have that right relationship with the Most High that comes through Yeshua, right? And that is kind of motivated and instigated by the Ruach HaKodesh, right?
In fact, he said that if we wanted to try to base what we do on anyone, we had to be better than the Pharisees who overdid.
Right,
They did too much.
which is quite a thing, right? He said it's interesting. Yeshua criticizes no one more than the Pharisees. And it's interesting that people want to kind of slight the Pharisees. When you think about, the Most High, he chastises his own. He chastises his own. Right? His son is, the son is the one who receives the most chastisement. The kid running around in the street, I mean, I may say something to him, but
you have said something to kids.
I probably, I know, but it's not. I'm not obligated to do it. I don't feel obligated, right? But my own son is a different thing. And so when we think about the way that Yeshua treated the Pharisees, it is because of, these people, as the holders, the keepers of the Torah and the teachers of the Torah, they have the greatest responsibility in the nation. And so, they have a greater responsibility than the average person because they have more information, right? They have more knowledge. These are people that spend their whole life is surrounded by the Torah and learning the Torah and understanding it. Remember, in these times, nobody had a Bible, right? They didn't even make books like that, right? These things were scrolls, but nobody had a scroll. Like you didn't have a Torah scroll in your house, right? You just didn't have it. Like
we wouldn't have one if they didn't make them that was printed like computer paper, because we wouldn't be able to force someone to write a whole scroll for us.
No, right. We think about the ease at which we're able to obtain anything that's written, for that matter.
Yeah.
But in those times before you had a printing press, it literally took somebody, I don't know how long it took, but it had to take a long time because they're writing these meticulous letters, right? They have to be sure that they're in the exact place, right? The exact size. When you think about you have these letters like a final mem, say, and like a samek, where you're writing these things where they're kind of similar. You have these things like a dalet and a resh. The length at which you make a nun or a kaf, right? Where these things where they're shaped the same, but they're different. But they you could confuse. There's a lot of little things that there's a lot that goes into even just writing the alphabet. But think about writing these specific words, these holy words that you don't want to get wrong. You want to make sure that you maintain the integrity of the scriptures. It wasn't readily available, right? And so you had to go to where the Torah scroll was if you wanted to read it, right? And another thing is, we think about the way that people quoted scripture. These things were quoted from memory. It wasn't like somebody just sat up there and pulled out their Bible and said, "Oh, you know that one place in the Bible where it says blah." Pick it, open it up, and look at it. These things were memorized, right? Because I think that we kind of hurt ourselves because of all of these quote unquote. I'm going off on a tangent right now. We kind of hurt ourselves when we, the way that we deal with things in, with all of our devices and all of our modern, advances in technology. I feel like it deteriorates our brains, right? Where at some point you had the capabilities in your mind to have your mental Rolodex, where you were able to remember these various combinations of numbers in your head. I couldn't tell you what my son's phone number is. I have no idea.
I don't even know a number in it.
I might know. I know 2 phone numbers. I know 3 phone numbers. All right. I know 3 phone numbers that I know memorized, and one of those is my own. And so it's like you think about the things that you have memorized, but it's only because you don't have to memorize it. But the things that you have memorized, I'll never forget. I had to go and get. I think I had to renew my driver's license or something. I was going and I was doing some official business, and I had my little brother with me at the time, and he was younger. And so, they always ask you for, date of birth, social security number, and all these numbers that you remember. And he was just like, how do you remember all of those numbers? Like, he was so childlike because he was little at the time. How do you remember all these numbers? Because you're sitting here rattling off all of these numbers that you have memorized. You don't have to look and go and look at it or whatever. But they're things that you must memorize because you use them so much. But when you think about the Torah at that time, the scripture was that. You couldn't take the Bible, the Torah scroll with you. It had to be memorized. And so and sometimes I would think that it was memorized based on somebody else saying it. So it's not even like you was able to sit there and look at it 10 times. Somebody would say it, and you would have to remember what they said. And so there was just so much involved in, the memorized the distribution of the Torah, right? I don't even remember why I got here, but now I do. Pharisee. There was so much in the distribution of the Torah, and the Pharisees was the ones who did it. And so this is one of the reasons why he was so hard on these people, right? Okay, so when we go back over here and we think about the righteousness, this righteousness that of Noah. We use this word righteous. What does this word even mean, righteous, right? Righteousness is the quality of being right morally. Okay, sometimes the word righteousness can be used to designate holiness. Sometimes it could be used to designate justice when we think about righteousness. Sometimes, this word righteousness can be used to designate faithfulness, right? And so when we look at this word, righteous, this word Sadiq, right, who is these righteous one, who is, the way that Noah is being described. When we think about ways that we can think about righteousness through our relationship with Yeshua, we have this thing that's called imputed righteousness, right? We're getting very theological here when we think about the idea of imputed righteousness. It's kind of like unto and connected with justification, imputed righteousness. Justification, allots to us imputed righteousness, or righteousness that's credited to our account, where it doesn't have anything to do with things that we may have done, right? Where Paul talks about the fact that you're justified by faith and not by works, right? It's not, you're justified not by the things that you do. And I'm saying justified because when you're justified, righteousness is imputed to you. It's basically put on you, right? It's the way that you're viewed. You're viewed by the Most High as righteous, right? So when we think about one aspect of righteousness is imputed righteousness, which is totally disconnected from anything that you have done outside of your faith in Messiah. And so a lot of times, when we see some of our Christian contemporaries, let me say mainstream Christian contemporaries, think about righteousness kind of short-sightedly, from this perspective of, imputed righteousness. Well, he did it, so I don't have to do it, right? But it's not dealing with the fullness of, what righteousness is, because that's only one aspect, the imputed aspect. All of your righteousness that is initiated by you, that comes from you apart from any spiritual motivation, is as filthy rags, right? But there's different aspects of righteousness that we enjoy, and again, one of those things is imputed righteousness. Let's look at some other ways that we can think about the idea of righteousness, because there was a type of righteousness that Noah enjoyed, that he manifested, right? So let's look over here at let's look at Psalms 119 and 11. Psalms 119, read for us verse 11.
I have treasured up your word in my heart, that I might not sin against you.
Okay, so when we think about this verse here, when we think about what's going on with this whole idea of treasuring up your word in my heart, think about the way in which one would treasure up words in your heart for a purpose. Now you're treasuring up these words in your heart for the purpose that you don't sin against the Most High. But how would you be treasuring up words? There's a process even in this idea of treasuring up words in your heart. First, you have to actually see the words to begin with. You have to actually put the words in your heart to begin with, right? You have to seek the words and actually put them there. And then there's a difference between me putting words in my heart, just getting, having the knowledge of a word, and treasuring up the word. What's this word mean to? What does word mean to treasure it up? Like if I'm treasuring something up, I'm locking it. I lock it. Right? I'm making sure that no one can take it. I'm making sure that I always have it. Right? What's this word here? Where's my trusty? The word in the King James says to hide it. To hide it. When we think about hiding a thing, now this is a whole other situation, because you hide things so from other people so they won't take it.
I was thinking like a squirrel, like
a squirrel. They hide they hide it so that other squirrels don't come along and take it.
And they know exactly where they put it.
They know where they put it, and the other squirrels don't know, right? But they do that because they know that a time is coming when they're not going to readily be able to just gather, these nuts all the time, right? So they think about the time that's coming when they won't have all access, and they gather these things up, right? So there's a reason behind the hiding. But this word here, tsafan, where's my cursor? There it is. To hide, by covering over, by implication to hoard or reserve, figuratively to deny. If I'm hiding it, I'm denying it from others. I'm keeping it to myself. Favorably protect, right? Unfavorably to lurk, esteem, hide, lay up, keep in a secret place, right? All right, so when we think about the idea of hiding the words of the Most High in our heart, is me taking these words and putting them inside of myself as tools for my use when it comes to my behavior, right? Because when we think about because again, over here it says, I've treasured up your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. So the intention that's behind the storing up of these words has to do with the transforming of my character, right? And we're talking about righteousness now here.
Yep.
Right? Me gathering up these words and putting them in a place where I'm able to cause them to be readily available by me. Right? When you think about the idea of meditating on the words of the Most High, you're just kind of thinking about the Most High and His goodness and what He has done. Right? And when you think about the goodness of the Most High, it causes you draw closer to the Most High. You just think about, all of the good things that He's done for you, right? But when we think about the idea of treasuring up His words in your heart, this is the same idea. And so when we think about principles in our lives that are derived from or help to form our standard of rightness, right? This is a way that we would be doing this, is treasuring up these words of the Most High, right? And so another way that we can think about righteousness in our lives is this idea of sanctification. Right? We can think about righteousness in two separate ways. We can think about it in terms of a righteousness that is an imputed righteousness, and then we can think about a righteousness that deals with a process of us kind of acquiring actual righteousness, right? Sanctification. And so this, is something that deals with the spiritual influence that we have from the Ruach HaKodesh, right? If we look over at, let's go over to Romans. Read Romans 8. Read verses 4 and 5. Just start at 3. We really want 4 and 5, but let's go to the beginning of the thought here.
For the Torah being powerless, in that it was weak through the flesh, Elohim having sent his own Son in the likeness of flesh of sin, and concerning sin, condemned sin in the flesh, so that the righteousness of the Torah should be completed in us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the matters of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the matters of the Spirit.
Okay, so this here is really kind of the manifestation of righteousness. Right? This is the manifestation of righteousness. Not doing things according to the flesh, but doing things according to the Spirit. Right? Where it talks about the fact that the Torah, the law, statutes, and commands, the character of the Most High is completed in you when you walk in the Spirit. When you walk according to the Ruach HaKodesh. Right? And so we're able to see when we follow after the Spirit that the Most High has given to each and every one of us, it causes us to walk in a way of righteousness. Let's also look at Deuteronomy 6. Deuteronomy 6. Read verses 24 and 25.
And Yahweh commanded us to do all these laws to fear Yahweh Elohim, for our good always, to keep us alive as it is today. And is righteousness.
And it is
righteousness for us when we guard to do all this command before us, before Yahweh our Elohim, as he has commanded us.
It is righteousness for us. What's righteousness for us? Walking in his commands. He commanded us to do all of these things. Us doing all of these things is righteousness for us. It's righteousness for us when we walk in his law, statutes, and commands. And it's righteousness for us when we walk in his Torah. Okay? It's righteousness for us when we allow the Spirit inside of us to be the leading and guiding force for our actions and ways that we behave in this world. And so it's righteousness for Noah whenever he does according to whatever laws it was that he had that was passed down through the generations as a standard of righteousness for the towards the Most High. Again, when we look at the Torah as we know it, it's not exactly the same as what we see pre-Torah. It's not in the same in terms of its specifics. But the way in which it is the same is that the Most High gave his people a particular standard that he wanted for his people to live by, and then he Noah, in this case, abided by those things. It's interesting when we think about the Torah and one being righteous. It's interesting that when we think about perfection and righteousness according to Torah, and we think about perfection in such a way where there isn't mistakes, which I think is a false way to think about it. Because when we think about the Torah in regards to the way that we understand it, the Torah is about making mistakes and correcting the mistakes that were made accordingly. That's what we find in the Torah. So when we think about Noah and the fact that he was in fact a righteous man, and the fact that he was in fact blameless, I think it's helpful for us to understand that his perfection wasn't about 100% on a test. Right? His perfection was based on the fact that the Torah don't call for you to be 100% on the test. But similarly, like say for instance, we have these various tests and trainings that we have, with work and things, right? And they give you the test, right? You might watch a video, but then you do a test at the end of the video. Nobody's handing in that test that you did, just like that at all of these work training things, right? Because it's not about you having some type of memory thing, right? You go over it at the end, and you get all the right answers, and if you have some wrong ones, then you fix it, and then you hand that in.
That's how they do it?
That's how you do it. Nobody's getting an A.
That's how you do it?
Nobody's getting a B.
You don't actually have to know what the answer is. Don't tell
Nobody
people.
at the end. Yeah, at the end, nobody's getting a B on these training things, because that's not the point, right? The point is for you to have a real knowledge of the materials, right? And so in Torah, if I make a mistake, well, inside of Torah is in there. Well, if I make a mistake, here's what I do as a result of the mistake that I made.
Okay.
If it was calling for me to be 100%, why do I got these things in here? These things are here because when I do make a mistake, I say, oh, well, this is how I address the thing that I've done. Right? It's maturity. It's completeness. It's fullness. Right? And some of these things don't have anything to do with mistakes. Right? Just things that happen. Right? If a particular thing happens, you think about like the woman's situation. Right? Things happen. Right? With their womanly things. I feel like Rocky when he talked about his wife dying. She had the woman's disease.
That didn't make no sense. Why he said that? That was ridiculous.
Oh, he was obviously talking about ovarian cancer, right? That's what he was obviously talking about. But that's how I feel when I'm saying we're talking about these womanly things, right? But it's a natural thing that happens, right? But the Torah calls for you to address these things that are happening in a particular way. And then when you fail to do that, then now there's a problem. Right? And so the whole Torah is like this, right? It's calling for us to walk in a particular way, and things may happen. And then when these things happen, then now you have to address these things that happen in a right way. And so when we think about the idea of this perfection, this blamelessness that Noah walked in, this is what we're talking about, right? There was a standard that he knew of. There was a standard that he knew of that came from the Most High, and he lived his life according to that. And it says that he walked with Elohim. So we think about the idea of walking with Elohim. It's interesting that, sometimes, when walking, and I'm talking about now taking one foot and putting it in front of the other and continuing on with that situation, right? Sometimes you don't look down at what's down there. And you're walking forward. You have a particular direction. You're going over there. You don't look down at what your feet are doing. And you don't notice the unevenness of the ground. You might turn your ankle and trip and fall. Right? You might step on something you don't want to step on. Right? There might be a step there that since you weren't looking down, you were just looking over at where you were going to. You didn't see all of these things. Right? We have to think about the fact that walking involves kind of a lot of things. Sometimes we get focused on the end result and we don't think about the process, the journey, right? But all of these are included. And so in the journey, there could be missteps, right? And so, but the right thing to do when facing these missteps is to just adjust, right? You have to adjust to, what's going on. And so that's what we think about when we think about this idea of blamelessness. It's about dealing with these things that would, that may or may not happen in your situation. Right? It's not about 100%. Right? It's about just dealing with what is 100% is the fact that you're always treating these situations in the way in which the Most High will have for you to be treating them. What do we see over here in the comments section? Everything we perfect or master in our lives takes practice and study to become perfect. Even then, there's still room for improvement. Yes. Yeah. And so when you're practicing a thing, you're doing something over and over again. You're doing something over and over again. Always think about, playing music. When you learn how to play music, there's something that's happening in your mind. And you're thinking about it. You're thinking about each note as it comes and where your fingers have to go in order to achieve the note. And you're thinking about the rhythm of the music and all of this. You're thinking about all of these things. It's mechanical when you're practicing. But when you get to the point of mastering a particular piece, the thinking part goes away, but not without the practice first. Right? When you've practiced, it just becomes, I guess it's spiritual. It's not something there's nothing mentally going on in your mind when you're playing something that you've mastered. There's no more thoughts. Your fingers go to the place where it's supposed to be there, and they stay there for the length of time that they were supposed to stay there, and they move exactly at the time when they were supposed to move when you've mastered a thing. Right? You can be playing something and thinking about a whole other thing when you get to that point of mastery of a thing. But you only get there through practice, through making mistakes, right? Through going through the motions. And so when we think about righteousness, which is this way, this standard that was created by the Most High, we're constantly on this path of striving for righteousness, for actual righteousness, because again, we've received an imputed righteousness from the Most High. He's already said through what we, through our faith in Messiah, He's already said, I dub you righteous. Right? He already did the thing and tapped you on both shoulders and said, you're righteous now. Right? He's done that part. But in terms of the actual righteousness, there's a part of us walking out our righteousness, this process of righteousness that we go through where we're doing things to the best of our ability and knowledge. And then when we see that, when it's made known to us through the Ruach HaKodesh, we make the necessary adjustments and continue to move forward. Okay? All right, so let's keep on going over here. Let's go
That was
over.
the first verse, babe.
Huh?
You just thought all we did was do the first verse.
Yeah, I guess so. That's what we were talking about. Yes. Well, there's a lot in this idea of walking with the Most High and being righteous and blameless. All right, so let's go back. Let's deal with. Let's drop down to verse. Let's read again. Verse 12. Let's read verse 12 one more time.
And Elohim looked upon the earth and saw it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth.
Okay, very good. So when we look over here at, again, we think about the state of the earth at the time, and again, we think about that in relation to Noah, right? The earth, it said all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. I feel like we are able to actually take this literally, I feel like, because he literally wipes out the earth.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like this is not just, it's not hyperbole. It's not just saying all, but really it's just most. Right?
Then he would have judged righteous people and with the wicked people.
What?
I said if it was most, then he would have judged the righteous people and with the wicked people.
That's what he would have been doing, right? Because everybody.
What did they say? What's it called? Anadochi or something like that?
Synodochi.
Synodochi.
But I don't know if you're pronouncing it correctly.
That's how you pronounce it.
I know, but I don't know if I
Right,
I think it's synecdoche. Is what it is. Synecdoche. That's when you, and let me just say, the reason why I know how it's pronounced is because of Aquila and the Bee, because it was one of the spelling words in the movie, synecdoche. But that is.
I don't know how to spell it then, because now I'm not even able to write that down. If it's just a spelling bee word.
Well, you can Google it.
I probably don't know what.
But what it is describing describing the whole by the part.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it technically is. But I don't think that's what I'm saying that's not what we're seeing here, because literally the whole earth except for one family was judged. So in this particular case, this is not synecdoche, right? This is all of the earth being judged. But again, when you think about this, now if you're dealing with thinking about the righteousness of the Most High, again, understanding who the Most High is helps us to fully understand his actions, what he does, and the things that aren't said. We're able to know, based on the fact that we know that the Most High is righteous, that everybody literally had to have been wicked because he killed everybody. We have to be able to assume that there was no redeeming qualities in none of the other people that existed outside of Noah, and that's why he killed them all and saved only Noah. Maybe they would have been a little bit good, but all they would have been able to do was teach their children halfway, and half wicked is all the way wicked.
Still guilty. Yeah.
Right? And so when we think about the fact that the Most High at this point, basically is telling us that there was no one who was redeemable in the earth at this time, and the only one that was left was Noah and his family. Right? The whole earth was filled with violence, and the earth was corrupt before Elohim. And so again, we think about the righteousness of Noah, this righteousness that he, again, the scripture don't tell us this, but we're able to deduce it, that he had a righteousness. He walked with Elohim. His righteousness was connected to the character of the Most High. He walked with the Most High. But everyone around him didn't. No one around him did. Right? And so, this is one thing that we might think about. How can we think about the earth and being judged by a thing that they might not even have been given? At this point, Noah, in this righteousness that he was walking in, he had this handed down traditions and things that he did that was in agreement, in accordance to the words of the Most High. But these people being separated then, like just say these people, had more of an influence that come from this line that was separated from the Most High.
Yeah.
These people are being judged by something that, they didn't have the standard.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to understand that when we think about things in terms of law, you being ignorant of the law never justifies you. Right? You're never able to claim ignorance. You can't go and stand before a judge and say, well, I didn't know that I wasn't allowed to do this. Right? If I'm somewhere with my weapon that I'm not supposed to be, if I'm somewhere with my weapon and I'm not supposed to be, I can't sit up here and say, well, I didn't know that I'm not allowed to bring my weapon in this place. It's my duty to find out what the laws are so that I'm able to abide by them.
Right.
That's just a natural part of being a citizen and a human being somewhere. I need to know which things I'm accountable to do and do those things. And so when we think about the idea of people living these heathenistic lives, the Most High has given us these wonderful minds, and he requires something of us, because when we look over in places like the Romans, where it talks about the idea that nature itself yearns for the coming of the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
If nature is able to figure out that we're living in a place that's lacking from a connection to the Most High, how much more so us humans who were created in His image, how much more so should we too be learning, yearning, expecting the coming of the Most High? And so no one has an excuse to say that nobody taught me this or that. When you get to be a certain age, it's time for you to be able to be thinking about, why am I here?
Exactly.
How did I get here? What is this all about?
Right.
It got to be something more than just some explosion somewhere and accidentally atoms and things colliding, and here I am.
Right.
What do we have here? And in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, we see He would have spared the city if there were a few righteous. Oh yes, exactly. Let's go over to Romans. Let's go over to Romans chapter 2. Romans chapter 2, read for us verse, here, let me make this larger. Read for us verse 12.
For as many as sin without Torah shall also perish without Torah, and as many as sin in the Torah shall be judged by the Torah.
Okay, very good. So there's a separate judgment, but the same results.
Yep.
If you're sinning outside, you was never connected to the Torah. All that means that it's interesting when we think about what it talks about in the book of John, where it talks about the belief that is necessary for us to have in Yeshua. In terms of, if I believe, I receive eternal life.
Yeah.
But if I don't believe, I'm condemned, or I'm already condemned. So all I do is just stay in the state that I'm already in.
Right.
And so when we talk about the idea of sinning without Torah, I've never been connected to the Most High in the first place. I'm only going to receive the thing that I'm already due to receive. And so when we think about the fact that if we go back and these people are not that far removed from the beginning, right? They're closer to the beginning, and they're able to look in their family lineages to be able to go back and understand what they should be doing. But we talked about already the quote unquote freeness that exists in a life of sin. People don't want boundaries. People don't want standards. They don't want to be told what to do. And people didn't just now start not wanting to be told what to do. This is just life. You gain an understanding about yourself, and the first thing you know how to do and do perfectly is rebel. The first thing that you master in life is rebellion.
Yeah.
Because someone always wants to give you structure, and you don't want structure. You want to be free, quote unquote.
Uh-oh. Yossi just pointed at you.
Who you pointing at?
I think he's pointing at
Oh.
his brother.
I thought he was. I thought he was saying.
But the thing is that this is just the nature of humans. And so when we think about the earth at this time, it's only a representation of the people's disconnection from the Most High. And so what the Most High does here is say, these people don't recognize what purpose they've even been put here for to begin with. So I'm going to start again.
Yeah. I think the key word in that verse was at Genesis 6 and 12. Is that where is that?
Yes, exactly.
Is he said, and the Most High looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. For something to be corrupt, mean there had to be a certain way before.
Yeah.
So these people had to know. They just changed from what the course that was set. So for all flesh had corrupted. It changed.
Right.
Cast off. They cast off what they knew.
Yeah. I mean that's a key component to understand here when we think about this idea that the Most High, we have this in this verse here, shachat, to decay. Something decays.
Yeah.
That is a process that happens.
That's a process.
But it can happen. It happens to something that begins in a pristine state. Something is ruined. That just means that it's not good anymore. But it used to be. Right? We have perishables. They perish over time, but they start off perfect. And so, it's things spoil. You have, fruits and vegetables. And, they start off one way and they devolve into something else. And so that's what we see with mankind. And there's this thing that goes on with the earth, with the with righteous men attaching themselves to unrighteousness and pulling them away. All right, let's go over to the next chapter here. Because again, if we go through here, we see that, what is coming, and Noah being commanded to build this ark. But I want to talk about just a few other things in this next chapter. Let's read chapter 7.
Start now.
Yeah.
The Lord said to Noah, "Come into the ark, you and all your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Of all the clean beasts, take with you 7 pairs, a male and his female, and of the beasts that are unclean, 2, a male and his female, and of the birds of the heavens, 7 pairs, male and female, to keep offspring alive on the face of all the earth. For after 7 more days I am sending rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and shall wipe from the face of the earth all that stand that I created." And Noah did according to all that Yahweh commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were on the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife, his sons and his wife and his son's wives, went into the ark because of the waters of the flood, of the clean beasts, and the beasts that are unclean, and of birds, and of all that creep on the earth. 2 by 2 they went into the ark, male and female, as Elohim had commanded Noah. And it came to be after 7 days that the waters of the flood were on the earth, in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the second new moon, the 17th day of the new moon. On that day, the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of the heavens were open. And the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the same day, Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, went into the ark. They and every life form after its kind, and every beast after its kind, and every creeping creature that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every bird of every sort. And they were into the ark of Noah. They went into the ark of Noah, 2 by 2 of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. 2 by 2. And those going in, male and female, of all flesh, went in as Elohim had commanded him. He always shut them in. And the flood was on the earth 40 days, and the waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. And the waters were mighty and greatly increased on the earth, and the ark moved about on the surface of the waters. The waters were exceedingly mighty on the earth, and all the high mountains under all the heavens were covered. The waters became mighty, 15 cubits upward, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died. The creeping creature on the earth, birds, cattle, beasts, and every swarming creature that swarms the earth, and all mankind. And all whose nostrils was the breath of the spirit of life, all that was on the dry land died. So he wiped off all that stand which were on the face of the earth, on the ground, both man and beast, creeping creature, and bird of the heavens, and they were wiped from the earth, and only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark, and the waters were mighty on the earth 150 days.
Okay, very good. Very good. So, we look over here again as it begins in chapter 7 here. It reiterates to us that Noah, even from the words spoken from the Most High, he said, I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Sadiq. Sadiq. You are just. You are lawful. The Most High at this point has created a particular law, and Noah lived his life according to that law. And he was the only one that did it.
He was.
Let's look at something real quick. This word here, Sadiq. It's interesting, the word Sadiq, whose root is Sadak. Let's look at this word here in the ancient.
Excuse me.
We have here. All right, this is what the word looks like. The root of it. Sadi, a dalet, and a kuf. A tzadi. I'm doing this in reverse. A tzadi is it's a man on its side. It's a man on his side that is hunting, right? If I'm crouched down hunting, I'm in a prone position, right? I'm in a prone position, and I'm laying down on my side. It's also the path. It's also the path and the destination. The dalet, which is the tent opening, the tent door flap, which gives you the idea of movement, and in and out. And then the kuf, which is the sun at the horizon, which also deals with the collection of things to a particular point, or the concentration of light to a particular point. And so when we think about this word here, it deals with the one who is on the path that leads through the door to the concentration of light, right? Or the righteous one, right? Your path that you're on is taking you through the door and leading you to the source and the concentration, the way, the place where the light comes together at, right? And this is who Noah was. He had his sights set on something that was on the other side of the door. He was on one side, but his sights were set on the thing that was on the other side of the door, which was the origination, the concentration of light.
That's right.
And he wanted to get over there. And so a door flap, there's like a bottom to the door flap. You can see the light at the bottom of the flap. And so he got himself down in a prone position so he could crawl under the door and get to the other side. Right? So he could get over there. He did what he had to do in order to get to where the light originated from. That's what righteousness is. There's a way to get around. You just get up and walk around. But there's things that you must do in order to get to the place where the Most High will have for you to be at. And those ways aren't always the convenient for you.
Right.
There's things that you must alter, change about yourself. You got to get down and crawl to get to the place where the light originates.
And what that represents too is humility.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Because you gotta lower yourself. You gotta, and pride, let's associate people standing tall, chest out.
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
And so while everybody's walking around
Puffed up.
all this and that about themselves, Noah is causing himself to be humble and low and seeking not what the world is doing, but what the Most High will have for him to be doing. Think about what it was like for Noah at this time. I wonder what the location of this was. Was it even by water? Where Noah built the ark, was he even close to where water was?
Well, we know ancient civilization had to be near water because it's part of life, so it couldn't be too far away.
Well, say it was close to like a river or something.
Okay.
How was he supposed to get it there?
Yeah, because he just building it.
He built a huge
First of
thing.
all, this how big this thing's supposed to be.
It's as big as the Nephilim.
He was he planning on? He wasn't planning on moving it. So
I know, but if I'm looking at it, if I'm on the outside looking in, and you're building this thing that's as big as the Nephilim, it's 300 cubits.
Mhm.
I'm looking at this thing. How is he supposed to get that thing over to wherever the water is? Even if he is near water, how's he supposed to get it there? I'm saying from the outside looking in, we're looking at this guy.
Maybe it was looking at like he was crazy.
How
Oh,
much
you
ridicule?
definitely look crazy.
How much ridicule did he face?
People was looking at him like he was crazy.
He had to have been.
That was like when people say to me, I heard this.
You're building an ark.
Yeah.
Why aren't you building something to get the ark to the water?
They say you're living to die. Whenever you're looking for towards the kingdom, you're living to die. That's what the world says.
Yeah.
So the world's probably looking at him like, why are you thinking about the future like that? Like, you know, it's like the
Meanwhile-
whole prepper thing.
Meanwhile,
like,
he living to live again.
He's living to live again.
Exactly.
Go get, go get the baby.
And he did that from the time he was told to do. It was 120 years.
That's crazy.
He's been a majority
That's a
of his
long
life.
time in his life to be set on a particular goal and nobody around you is on the same page as you. And everybody around you's looking at you like you crazy. The whole world, at least the whole surrounding world that dealt with him had to, and you can't even act like, you can't even say, well, he was this someplace secluded or whatever. This was a huge undertaking
Yes.
where it don't talk about the ridicule that he faced, but I know for a matter of fact that he
Nobody
faced
was laughing at that man.
Oh yeah.
Moshe said something.
What?
I was very surprised. Go ahead, say it.
The flood is water. That's how he get the water.
He got to the water because of the flood.
He did get to the water because of the flood, but I'm just saying that's the only way that he got there.
That was his only purpose.
That was his only purpose. But I'm saying if I, as an outsider looking in, it only gives me reason to ridicule this person because I'm looking at this man who's building this vessel that's nowhere close to where water is, and if it is close to where water is, it's so big. How can I even move the thing to the place? I'm saying this is what the outsiders are saying,
Yes.
and this is what he's facing,
Yeah.
where he has all these people. If we go look back at Genesis 6 and 5. Yahweh saw the wickedness of the man, and every inclination of their thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. So all they did was look in disdain and wickedness towards this man who's doing this righteous thing. They probably talked about him and his righteousness, his love for this God that he served, and in his craziness in building this boat in the middle of nowhere with no way to move it into the water. And then he start gathering up animals to put in the thing. Like from a worldly perspective, the people looking at him probably had nothing but ridicule for him at this time. Go ahead.
I remember before the pandemic hit, Elder Yawanathon, Elder Christian, was getting rice. Well, Elder Yawanathon always prep, but you was going down to Costco and buying rice, and y'all was all talking about something was going to happen. And me and Ebony was talking about it, and someone near us was like, "What are y'all talking about?" And we was like, "Oh, nothing." we didn't want the ridicule that would have come with us. You know what I mean? Just openly discussing. I don't want to put her under the bus. I didn't want the ridicule of what was to. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because from the outside looking in, people who aren't spiritual don't have an understanding of spiritual things. Yeah. So if I start talking to someone about a spiritual thing, and they're not spiritual, they're not really able to understand. So I honestly feel like it was kind of like that with these people, that since they wasn't spiritually connected, they didn't understand the task that was at hand. I don't know if there's anything he could have said to them that would have even convinced them that there was something to come.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I don't know that it was necessary for him to say anything to convince them. My only point in saying it was the fact that the pressure that must have existed from the outside towards him, it had to have been great. And so Noah, for us, is an interesting picture for us, because we look at Noah, he was the only representation of righteousness in a world of gross iniquity. Like, the world is just in gross iniquity. And everything about the life of the righteous, everything about your life is, diametrically opposed to everything that's going on in the world around you. The vast majority of the world today is crazy. Crazy. And so when we think about the picture that Noah gives to us in terms of living in this place where, most everybody, at his time, everybody that's living around him is doing the complete opposite of what he's doing. And he maintained, his focus on the task and did only what the Most High called for him to do, which was to make this vessel, to gather those animals, to prepare what was getting ready to happen, and to go ahead and let the plan be executed. And so when we think about ourselves in this world, what we have over here, comments says, Yah's ways always appear contrary to man's limited understanding. And we live in an existence, our reality is that our normal, the things that we call normal, the things that we consider to be our, baseline, to other people is lunacy. It's so much money to be made on Saturday. Why you ain't trying to make it? There's so many things that could be done on Saturday. Why won't you go do those things? Bacon is so delicious. Why won't you put it on your sandwich?
I do turkey bacon.
All of these different kinds of things that we do normally that the world says is crazy. But we, in spite of all of the thoughts and ideas of the world and all of the ways in which the world tries to influence us, we have to continue on the path that the Most High has set us on and not allow for this outside criticism to cause us to waver from the task that the Most High has put us on. Just like Noah. Because it don't talk about the criticism that he faced, but how wasn't he facing criticism? He had to have that. Okay, let's keep on going over. Because again, when we look at Noah, we understand that the Most High had a standard of living for Noah, and Noah met that standard. We understand that, there was a standard for humans, right? That Noah met, that the people in their wickedness, they didn't meet, right? Because again, if we look back to the previous chapter, this chapter talks about the wickedness of the people, but it says so perfectly in chapter 6 and verse 5, dealing with the wickedness of the people and every inclination of their thoughts, of their heart was evil. I want to go back to that verse real quick.
Ezra, hold it down.
Genesis 6 and 5. This word here, every thought, every imagination, conception, imagination, mind, work. We live in a place where every thought, every imagination of these people, the purposes of, mainstream thought are only wicked continually. And everywhere you look, these people put wickedness in places where, not so long ago, where it wasn't at. And it's like they're putting these wicked thoughts everywhere so that you don't have a choice but to begin to start thinking like them, whoever they are. Whoever they are, they want you to think only wickedness all the time. And so they put it everywhere for no reason, but there is a reason, because they want to perpetuate wickedness. Like, I shouldn't have to think about different types of content being in things that is made for kids and children. If something is quote unquote made for children, you would think that it's free from these various thoughts, perversions. It should be free from these things. But we live in a time and a place where they put this stuff in. It's everywhere we look. And the only thing that I can say is that these people want for us all to have a particular way of thinking, which is wicked. But that's the same thing that we see over in Genesis 6 and 5. If it's saying that everybody was wicked and every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil, that, we can understand what that looks like. Because you can see that right now. In the television commercials, in the television programs, in the movies, everywhere. Everywhere you look, it's just evil continually. And so, everything. And so, why wouldn't we now be looking around thinking like, the Most High is about to take these people out of here? Because this is going on for us right now. And so, but Noah had a particular understanding. And that's why these things that was going on around him didn't have a overruling influence over him, because he had his sights on righteousness. Read for us Jeremiah 17. Start reading at verse 7.
Blessed is the man who trusts in Yahweh and whose trust is Yahweh. For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters, which spreads out his roots by the river, and does not see when heat comes. And his leaf shall be green, and in the year of the drought he is not anxious, nor does he cease from yielding fruit. The heart is crooked above all, and desperately sick. Who shall know it? I Yahweh search the heart, I try the kidneys. I give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds.
Okay, very good. So this tree that's planted by the waters, which has its roots that are by the river, it don't see the heat that comes. That don't mean that heat don't come. That mean that he's not concerned with it coming, because the tree, or the one who trusts in the Most High, when tribulation comes, when extreme circumstances come, we aren't deterred from our situation based on the extreme situations that we know are coming. Heat comes. It's not even like it's this thing that might come. But it don't cause us to change, because we're rooted and grounded, trusting in the Most High. And so that's the same thing we see with Noah. Think about what must have been going through his mind to know that everyone in existence was going to die, and nobody was going to be left but you. What in the world does that feel like? Like, what goes through your mind when you think about, if you was to have to think about the fact that nobody's going to be here when this thing happens, but you only, and your wife and your kids and their wives. Everybody else is going to perish.
It's kind of traumatizing.
I mean, it's pretty heavy, I think.
Kind of traumatizing.
It's kind of like, when one person comes out of a battle alive.
Two man enter, one man leave. Somebody's gonna die. But the key thing to remember is the fact that Noah walked with Elohim. And so walking with Elohim looks like, what we see with Noah, where his influence was the Most High. In spite of the fact that everything around him pointed him away from the Most High. He lived in a place where he was the minority. And so how was he able to survive and thrive in this place? Look at Proverbs 5. Read for us verses 3 through 6.
Where the lips of a strange woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go to death. Her steps lay hold of Sheol. She does not consider the path of life. Her ways are unstable. Do not know it.
Do not know it. But it's interesting now. Why does it begin in speaking about this strange woman in such a fine way? Her lips drip like honey. Honey's pretty good. Honey is amazing. The Most High, when he speaks about the promised land, it flows with honey. The place where he wants for his people to go and dwell got honey all over the place. And then these strange women, their lips drip honey. Her mouth is smoother than oil. Wow. This is pretty there's a lot of alluring going on with these words, right?
Almost irresistible.
It is, isn't it? With her lips dripping honey. It's not even like honey. Her lips literally drip honey. There's honey dripping off of her lips.
I mean, if you think about, lip gloss today.
Oh my goodness. It's so inviting. But the end is like wormwood. So you think about the fact that these things that take us away from the Most High, at a glance, they're so you want those things. They're pleasant to the eyes. They're pleasant to the touch. There's things that you could take these things. These things, they're good for you. But the end of these things are death. And so the things that are contrary to the Most High, when you look at them, they're so appealing. They're so appealing to you in terms of what they look like. But when we're walking with Elohim, we have to have the ability to look at these things and understand that that's not for me. That thing's not for me. But that's what Noah had at this time. Because all of this wickedness going on around him, the easy thing for him to have done was to go ahead and participate in the wickedness. That's the easy thing. Oh, this strange women. Oh, it's nothing. It's just right there. It's wonderful. Let me taste it. But the strong thing to do is to say, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. Right? And that's the life that we have to live. Wickedness looks good. People can't be so holy and righteous to want to sit up here and act like wickedness don't seem appealing. If it didn't seem appealing, nobody would be doing it.
You wouldn't be in the minority.
But the facts of the matter is that the things that the Most High will have for us to do takes strength and discipline. And to walk in a way that's actually contrary to the Most High, don't. That way's the easy road.
Let's go to Proverbs, since we're in here, Proverbs 14 and 8. Proverbs, you can stay in Proverbs for an hour talking about this.
Hours.
Yeah.
14 what?
And 8. Reads different here, but it says.
Oh, hold on. I'll give you the what you want, the KJV.
Yeah. It says the. Oh, it's just. I mean, it's pretty much. It says the wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. So going what you were saying, talking about the woman, that first part being enticed, but then the next verse talk about knowing the end. You got to know the end is to think about the end. Think about the outcome of what your actions are going to be, and that's what people ain't doing.
Yeah.
They being enticed by the carnal, not thinking about the results of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one thing to know it did. If the Most High considered you righteous, you're prudent. You think about the end. You think about your actions. So that's probably one of the things too that motivated him to keep building the ark. It's like, oh, I know, because he could see like the decay.
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably like, yeah, I gotta do this because
Yeah.
it's like it ain't gonna get no better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it though.
And that's what we have to. That's the mind that we must have. The mind of Messiah. That's the mind that we must have in this world. Mm-hmm. We look at outside and all of these things that are so enticing, that work so hard to draw us in. We have to understand that at the end of all of those enticing things is death.
Deceit.
It's deceitful. It's deceitfully good looking. The things that taste the best
are the worst for you.
They're the worst thing for you.
The
The things
worst
that
for you.
taste the best.
Yeah.
And so, we have to understand and use wisdom. We have to understand and follow the ways of the Most High. Let's look at James 1. James 1, read verses 5 through 8.
Says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask the Most High, Yahweh, that giveth to all men. You want to go to the next one, the version, or
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't mean to leave it there.
Says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of Elohim, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it shall be given to him. But he should ask in belief, not doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. For that man shall not think that he shall receive whatever from the master.
Okay, very good. So, it's necessary for us in these times where we're able to look around and see these things that are going on around us and how bad that these things are. If we're not able to understand, the Most High is able to show us. The Most High is able to make something that don't seem to make sense. He's able to make it make sense. Mm-hmm. Because for Noah, the Most High said, make this boat that's 300 cubits wherever you are, and don't worry about getting it to the water. I'll take care of that. I'm going to open up the heavens. I'm going to open up the floodgates. Mm-hmm. And we're going to take care of getting that thing to sea. Don't worry about that. But he caused for Noah to be able to understand something that at first he probably wasn't able to understand.
Right.
But he sought after the Most High, and the Most High will show you. He's not going to cause you to do anything in the dark. He's going to show you the path and the way that he wants for you to go.
Especially like I say right in verse 6, but he shall ask and believe. You gotta ask.
African.
Some people just don't want to know. Mm-hmm. You hear people like you try to tell them, they gonna cover their ears or reject. Like it's what we're talking about rejecting knowledge. You rejected him.
How many times have you talked to somebody? How many times have you spoken to somebody about the Bible, righteousness, holiness, the Most High Yeshua, and people say, "I'm not ready for all that." Right now.
For real, yeah.
Don't even really talk to me about that right now. I'm not ready to even think about that stuff. I just want to. They might not say I just want to live here in my comfortable life, but that's what's going on, right? They want to just think about their own things, that their own life, their own things that they enjoy. In spite of the fact that these things are outside of what the Most High would have for us to be doing, people don't want to think about what would happen if they have to be held accountable for their actions. Like somebody could even momentarily think about the things that you regularly do and understand that these things are bad. But when it comes time to kind of really meditate and contemplate on the consequences of those actions, let's not do all that. I'd rather just do this thing, right? This thing that takes my mind away from reality. And that's what we have with, a lot of people, where you're just mindlessly moving through, space and time, not dealing with eternity. Yeshua, when he walked the earth, his message was a message of the kingdom, which is dealing with what's beyond what we're currently experiencing. And, when we think about things in that way, understanding that, this life that we live is temporary, is temporal, we are able to shift the focus and put the importance where it's supposed to be at, and that's on the Most High. And so when we think about this whole thing with the flood and Noah and the things that he must have been facing, at this time, it's really the perfect parallel to the life that we must live, that we're commanded to live in this day and time, is where everything around us is wicked. Everything around us wants to point us and pull us in the direction of wickedness, and we must, in spite of that, be perfect in our generation. We, in spite of that, have to walk blameless in this age of wickedness. There's judgment that's coming for those that are on the outside, not following after the Most High, not having sworn their allegiance to Yeshua HaMashiach. And although, the ways of the world may seem enticing and they may seem pleasurable, the end of those things are in fact death. And the Most High only wants for us to be reconnected back to Him, but we can't get there if we allow for our focus and motivation to be something that's not the Almighty. And so, just kind of closing down, thinking about what we see with Noah, definitely helps for us. At times when you look around and you see, there's nothing. Is there anything good? Is there anything good that's out there that's worth your time and attention? Every place you look is something that pulls you away from the Most High. And so that in and of itself should be something that causes you in your life to say, there's got to be something else. There's got to be a better way. These things, these distractions and things that they put out here must be trying to keep me from something.
Yep. What
is that thing? I want to know that. What's the thing that it don't want me to do? And let me do that. Them must be hiding something from me. What are they hiding from me? What is it? What is the thing?
Yep.
I want that thing.
That's definitely, because I always tell the story, like, when I first found it, then I removed everything out of my life. People thought I was crazy. I removed every distraction and only focused on it. And that got me on my butt. But I literally had to remove all the distractions, though. Like, people don't understand, like, because they're everywhere, and they don't want you to take the time to settle in and understand this.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the key. And replace it. Because when you remove the distractions, and when you read this book, it's information. But information comes from everywhere. When you watch a movie, there's information. Anything you do. And when you remove all of that, and you just got this, I feel like that's like the only way to truly get it.
Yeah.
Like, all distractions.
Yeah, and when you look at Noah, the example that he gives, he really gives us a perfect example, because again, even now we could think about, well, the world's crazy, but there's people that we could deal with. There's people we could deal with. There's somewhere we could go and find somebody who's doing the same thing as us. Somewhere. Right? It's not only you. But Noah, it really was only him. He was the only one. There was nowhere that he was able to look to and say, I can get some I can enjoy some camaraderie with these people.
Oh, yeah.
I could be encouraged by this one or that one. He had none of that. All he had was the Most High.
He had his family too, though, right?
Well, he had his family, but he was it was his sons. He was the head of the family. He had nobody that was his equal.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Peer.
Right.
He didn't have any peers, right? And so, but again,
I don't even know how righteous his sons were. I don't even know how righteous they was.
I'm just saying.
They made it out.
They made it out.
Yeah.
They made it out.
They made it out.
They made it out under his coattails.
They made the cut.
His house. They made the
And so we just have to be able to look to that
Oh my
and say how much more so can we be, because we have the power of the Ruach HaKodesh that's able to lead us and guide us and strengthen us in this world where everything, literally everything, is against us. But we have access to the strength and the power that gives us the ability to be able to build our boat in the middle of the desert with no truck or trailer to carry the boat to water. We have the ability to live in a way that's contrary to the mainstream normal and not be affected by the outside influence and only be driven by an inside influence, which is Yeshua HaMashiach and the Ruach HaKodesh. All right, so does anybody have any last minute questions or comments about any of that there with Noah?
Do you have anything to say about the judgment being on the earth, the Eretz, and not the sea or the air? The birds and the fish, they got to live.
It's interesting that it kind of mentions all things. It mentions all of those things at first, but there is kind of a differentiation in understanding that, obviously. Well, the birds, when you think about the birds, the things of the air, they can't fly forever.
Well, I guess
They gotta have somewhere to land.
They had to land somewhere, right? And that was the whole thing with, well, we didn't get to the part with the bird coming out yet, but
the fish.
just thinking about the things of the air, eventually you got to land. Those things do fly for a long time without landing, but eventually that runs out. But the things in the water, though,
they live.
I mean, they're in the means of judgment is their home, right? They're all good. Well, so I guess if you was going to think about it from a spiritual, you could spiritualize it, because water, is a picture of the Spirit. And all those that were enveloped in the water lived. And all those who were void of the water in the dry land died. And so, Yeshua talks about being the living water, right? And coming to him and never thirsting again. When we think about, what water represents from a spiritual perspective, we think about what the flood did. It killed all of the people. But as it was killing them, it was cleansing them. The water was it cleansed the earth. Right? The water cleansed the earth. When we think about how we are transformed, how we're changed, there's a cleansing part of it. Right? Not only do we begin to live a certain way, but we have to be we have to be cleansed of all of the past things, the past ways that we used to live our lives. And so, it's interesting, when you look at that, that literally happened in terms of, the dry land animals and all everything else basically outside of the ark perishing. But as a whole, the same thing that killed also cleansed. And when Yeshua comes back, he's going to kill. Yeshua's going to kill when he comes back, just like the flood did. But in the killing, there's going to be cleansing.
Fire this time.
Right? But the means are different, but it's the same results. The same one that's doing the cleansing is also doing the killing. Okay.
I wanted to say one thing.
Go ahead.
Growing up, there was a lot of like character traits that I used to admire, like confidence, just charismatic, oh yeah, that's that guy, But after growing up and learning, the greatest characteristic I think that everyone should have and put above all is self-control. If you're able to control yourself, your flesh, you'll go a long way. If you could say no.
Yeah.
When all of the temptations come upon you.
Yeah. And again, that message is just another component of what we see with Noah. Imagine how many times Noah had to say no. They don't talk about it, but he must have said no, even if the question was, or the thing that he was speaking about, stop building that boat. Stop building that thing. Stop gathering these animals.
No.
Stop following after this invisible God.
Right.
Come out here and involve yourself in what we're doing. There's so many things that they don't talk about that he must have experienced, and we know what the result of that thing happening. We know it had to be him saying no. It had to be him exhibiting self-restraint and discipline and self-control. He had to have that. He had to. They don't say that he did, but how didn't he?
Right.
All of that time doing this task that the Most High said for him to be doing, and every single thing around him was nothing but wickedness. What was his in-laws saying to him?
No.
What was the in-laws of his kids saying to him?
Just think of the
You
party.
gonna sit up here and take my baby?
Just think of the parties they was having.
All around, probably right over there, just a couple plots over. They was over there just getting into all types of debauchery. What you mean we gonna die? We having a good old time over here. And he had to say no.
Yeah.
And so, that's a wonderful note to be able to end on and understand that, this picture that Noah shows us really, is about, being able to follow the Spirit of the Most High and exhibit, one of the most important components of the fruits of the Spirit being self-control. Understanding that, just because this thing looks good, smells good, sounds good, all of these things don't mean that it's for you. The Most High has given us instructions that he wants for us to be doing. And, we have to make sure that we live our lives according to the Most High standard and not the standard of man. Because the place that man outside of the Most High, the place that man is going, it ends in death. All right, so that being said, unless anyone has any last questions, comments,
Be back on Wednesday at 1.
Yes, Wednesday we will be celebrating the Day of Trumpets. So we'll be on with a short message on trumpets. All right, so that being said, y'all willing, we'll see you then, and we'll say for now, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.